All right, please be seated. Mr. Frank, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Luckey, I think when we left off, we were just talking about the time that you were in the squad car running the information. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And at some point, while you were there in the squad car doing that, did another officer arrive?
Yes.
And who was that?
Sergeant Johnson.
And had you known Sergeant Johnson before that day?
Yes, when I first started.
First started at Brooklyn Center?
Yes.
Okay. So you recognized him when he showed up, in other words?
Yes.
And when he arrived, what did you tell him?
So I pretty much advised Sergeant Johnson of the reason for the stop. I informed him of the gross misdemeanor weapons charge that I learned about, and also the protection order that was also on my computer screen.
And so what did you do then?
So at this point, I advised Sergeant Johnson what my plan was, and that was to basically make contact with Daunte again at the vehicle, and also get the female passenger identified.
And did you have a decision in your mind about what you were going to do with Mr. Wright?
Yes.
What was that?
I advised Sergeant Johnson and Officer Potter at the time that we would be taking him out of the vehicle, placing him under arrest for the warrant.
And so what did you do then?
I exited my squad car and I reapproached the driver's side of the vehicle that Daunte was driving, and at that time I realized he was on the phone with someone who I believe he did say that it was his mother. And there was more communication going on. I don't know if I asked him again about the insurance, but I do know at one point I just asked him to step out of the vehicle so I can talk to him.
Did he tell you whether he was still looking for that insurance paper?
Yes, and I did see a bunch of papers on his lap as if he was still looking for the insurance.
And when you saw that he was on the phone, did you tell him to do something with regard to the phone?
Not until I asked him to step out of the vehicle.
So tell the jurors what you did then in that regard.
So when I requested Daunte to step out of the vehicle, I did request that he place the cell phone on the dashboard, which he did.
And what happened then after that?
After he placed the cell phone and moved the papers from his lap, he exited the vehicle. And at this time, I immediately requested that he put his hands behind his back. But before that happened, when I requested that he exit the vehicle, the female passenger did make eye contact with Daunte, and I believe she told him to just do it or just go.
And did he in fact then get out of the car?
Yes, with hesitation, yes.
And what do you mean by hesitation?
What was that?
What do you mean by hesitation?
He was very hesitant, not wanting to get out of the car. Eventually, it was the opening the car door slow, the thinking about it.
Yep. You're assuming he did not want to get out of the car because of the slow speed with which he did that, I assume.
Yes, I don't know what was going through his mind at the time, but it was that way, yes.
So he did eventually open the door. Did you help open the door?
Yes, I did.
And where did he go?
So immediately, the door opens up, he exits the vehicle, and I immediately advise him to turn around. At this time, I grabbed his hands behind his back. Immediately, Sergeant Johnson advised Daunte he was under arrest. I immediately said the same thing, and then Officer Potter said the same thing. So it was kind of all simultaneously. We told him that he was under arrest for a warrant.
So incidentally, when you told him to put down the phone, what did he do with the phone?
I believe he put the phone down on the dashboard.
Okay. And so then you get him out of the car. Where is he standing?
Right between the front door and the back passenger door.
Okay. Was the front door open at that point?
Yes.
And when you asked him to put his hands behind his back, did he do that?
Yes, he did do that.
And that area where you were stopped on 63rd, how many lanes of travel are there on 63rd there?
2.
So
And it would be eastbound and then a lane going westbound.
is there any shoulder or bike path or anything like that?
Yes, and there would be a north and south shoulder lane.
But at this point, are you standing on the shoulder or in the street? Do you know what I mean?
Both.
Yeah. Okay. Because where you're standing with him outside the car, are you in the lane of travel or off the lane of travel?
In the lane of travel, with my squad car blocking
Behind you.
behind you. Or behind me, yes, correct.
And at that point, did you see where Sergeant Johnson's squad car was?
Yes, it would have been behind my squad car.
And so why did you tell him that he had a warrant, he was getting arrested?
Why did I tell him that?
Yeah.
In the state of Minnesota, at least when we do place people under arrest, it's smart to advise people that they're under arrest if they decide to run. It also gives people the understanding of why they're being placed in handcuffs and why they're being detained.
He had not, let me say that again. You had not been able to put handcuffs on him at the point when you told him about that.
Correct, yes.
And Sergeant Johnson actually spoke first about the warrant.
Yes.
And so then as he puts his arms behind his back, what happens then?
I immediately grabbed his fingers, began lifting his sleeves upward. I do that before taking my handcuffs out of my handcuff case to have control of them. Immediately after I'm able to grab control of his hands behind his back, get his sleeves pushed up with the shirt that was underneath, I was able to get my handcuffs out, and immediately when I placed the left handcuff on his wrist, he jerked his arm back.
So at this point in time, where is Officer Potter?
She would be at the back of the vehicle, of Daunte's vehicle.
And Sergeant Johnson, where was he?
And he would be on the passenger, front passenger side of the vehicle.
So then when Mr. Wright pulled his arm away, what happened next?
So immediately, right when he starts to tense up, I basically just told him, I said, "Don't do it, bro." And at that time, I believe that's when he just looked to the right. I also believe that's when Officer Potter also approached him, attempted to grab his right arm. But right when that happened, he yanked his right arm upward and was able to get back into the vehicle.
And when you say get back into the vehicle, how much back into the vehicle?
At one point, it was half of his body. Initially, when he first attempted to get back into the vehicle, I was able to grab his head, neck, and I attempted to put him in a modified head grab against the car to stop him from getting into the vehicle. Pretty much, I placed his head against the panel of the door.
At some point, was he able to put himself into the driver's seat?
Yes, and then so while I was trying to gain control of him, to get him back out of the vehicle, he was able to grab the steering wheel and pull himself back into the driver's seat.
And what was Officer Potter doing at this time?
At this time, Officer Potter then ran over to the left side of me, where she tried to assist me with getting him out of the car.
And so what did you do trying to get him out of the car at that point?
At this point, it was me basically holding on to his jacket, grabbing his hand, trying to pull him out. However, he kept holding on to the steering wheel.
And were you able to see where his feet were at the time?
Yes, they were kind of all over the place. At one point on the floor, maybe hitting the brake at one point.
During this time, were you able to see what Sergeant Johnson was doing?
I cannot recall. I just know that he was doing something with the vehicle and also possibly trying to push him out of the vehicle. I can't recall exactly what he was doing, though.
Okay. Were you able to see him from your vantage point? Sergeant Johnson, I mean?
Yes, I was able to see him.
How much of it?
All of them.
Okay. And so were you able to tell what he was trying to do from the other side of the car?
Yes, I just seen, I think it was at one point he might have even put his hand on the shift gear, but I think that was pretty much all I can see. I just know that he was reaching over the front passenger, and I honestly can't recall what he was doing.
And when you're trying to get physical control of Mr. Wright, did you see him doing anything to try and operate the vehicle?
Yes.
What was that?
I believe he was, I don't know if he was trying to start the car. I don't know if he was trying to, well, he was obviously trying to put the car and drive. I'm assuming to drive away.
And so that was your mindset at the time, is that he was trying to drive away.
Yes.
And you were trying to stop him from doing that.
Yes.
And you had hands on him at the time? You had a hold of him?
Yes.
And did you make other attempts to stop the vehicle from moving at that point in time?
Yes.
What did you do?
There was at one point, I was able to see his hands. I believed he kept trying to grab upward towards the steering column. I believed that's probably where the key was, or the shift gear. So I also grabbed where he grabbed to try to undo whatever he did, which was the key or the shift gear that he went for.
Did you use your left hand to do that?
It would have been my left hand, yes, because I was still grabbing on the right with my right hand, yes.
So you had your right hand on him, and with your left you reached in to try and undo what he was doing.
Yes.
Would that have included trying to turn the key?
Yes.
Were you able to do that?
No.
So then, at this point in time, did you know where FTO Potter was at the time?
Yes, she would have been inside the door on the left side of me. So it would have been me a little bit outside the front passenger door, and then it would have been her basically to the left side of me.
You said front passenger door, do you mean?
Sorry, the front driver door.
Okay, driver's side door, right?
Yes, driver's side door.
And then did you hear something from Miss Potter at the time?
Yes.
What did you hear?
I heard Officer Potter say, "I'm going to tase you."
And what did you do after hearing that?
At that point, I was still trying to gain control of Daunte.
And were you able to?
Not completely, no.
Okay. You still had a hold of him, in other words.
Yes.
And what did you hear next?
I heard her say, "I'm going to tase you," again, I believe a second time, and then I believe that is when I heard taser, taser.
And what happened next?
At that same time, when she yelled that, that's when I was reaching into the vehicle trying to grab what I believed was the stick shift when Daunte grabbed in that area of the steering column. I just tried to undo whatever he did, and then that's when I just heard a bang.
And did you recognize what that bang was?
Yes.
What was it?
It was a firearm.
Okay. And did you see anything when that happened?
Yes.
What did you see?
I just seen just a flash, smoke, and at the same time, I suppose, a firearm.
Okay.
It was a gun.
And when you heard Miss Potter say taser, taser, what should you have done when she deployed her taser?
That's when you yell taser, taser. It's to notify officers that are around you to basically back away, so that way you don't get hit with the taser as well.
And when you heard this bang and you saw a flash in a firearm, did you know who it was? Whose gun it was, I guess, would be the question.
No, I did not at the time. I just knew that it wasn't Daunte's because I was able to see his hands.
And did you get hit by anything when this bang went off?
I believe I did get hit in the face with a projectile, yes.
You were using what was your duty weapon at the time?
Glock 17, 9mm.
And is that Brooklyn Center's standard issue firearm?
Yes, or it is a Glock 19.
And you've trained before that day on a Glock 17 or 19?
What was that?
You've trained before with that firearm?
Yes, only the one that I carry for work is the one I use, yes.
And you're familiar with how it discharges or in which direction it discharges a casing?
Yes,
Which direction does it discharge?
to the right.
And were you to the right of Officer Potter or to the left?
I was to the right.
After the shot, did you let go of Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Why?
That's when I realized that she yelled taser, taser. So it was pretty much simultaneously when it happened. When she yelled taser, taser, that's when I went back into the vehicle, realized that she said taser, taser, and right when I pulled back, that's when the round went off. So it was about the same time.
And did you hear Mr. Wright say anything?
I did not hear anything after that, the round going off for a brief moment.
Okay. Did you hear him say anything subsequent to the round going off at all?
No.
Do you recall him saying that he had been shot?
I did not hear him when that happened, but with the review of the video once or twice, yes, I believe he does say that, but
Okay.
I wasn't able to hear at that time when that happened.
And any idea why you were not able to hear it at that time?
Just from the gun going off at a close range.
At the moment that you heard the shot go off, did you see where Sergeant Johnson was?
No.
And after the shot went off, did you back out of the vehicle?
Yes.
Well, I guess that's kind of a bad way to phrase the question. Were you even in the vehicle at the time?
I was partially in the vehicle, yes. I would say my duty belt and up was probably in the vehicle when the shot went off, yes.
And you had a hold of Mr. Wright at that point in time?
Only with the right hand, I didn't.
And so after the shot, then, what did you see the vehicle do?
At that point, I jumped back, and I do believe that's when I was able to see Daunte put the car in drive, and the car just took off eastbound.
And did you see where it went?
Yes.
And I'm going to put Exhibit 1 back up on the screen for you, if you could, please. And you see Exhibit 1 on the screen again?
Yes.
And can you take the stylus again and show us what you saw of the vehicle, where it went?
Yes, I do believe from this spot, traveled eastbound till about this median, airborne over the median, made contact with another vehicle, and I believe that's when the vehicle crashed into a fence, which would lead to where the other X is.
Okay. And you were able to see that back at the stop location?
Yes.
Okay. And what did Officer Potter do after the vehicle left?
Immediately, right when the vehicle takes off, I turned back. First looked at Sergeant Johnson, then I looked at Officer Potter, and I realized what had happened. And immediately, I seen Potter, I believe, having her hand, or firearm, or a taser. I don't know if they were both out at the same time, but that's all I seen. And immediately, she became hysterical and stated that she shot him.
Did you see her place her firearm back in her holster?
Yes.
And when you were there, so I want to talk like the stop scene where you stopped Mr. Wright's vehicle and the crash scene. So if we call them those two different names, you'll understand what I mean, right?
Hmm? Yes.
Yes. And so when you're back at the stop scene, what do you do, immediately after the vehicle drove off towards the crash scene? What do you do?
I immediately got on my radio. I notified over the radio to officers and dispatched that shots were fired.
And did you provide any other information about what had happened in the incident?
Over the radio, I do not recall, no.
And at some point, did you become aware that other officers had responded to the other scene?
Yes. And immediately, oh, sorry.
Well, that's okay. And so at that point, did you remain at the stop scene?
Yes.
And we'll come back to that in a little bit. And when you were working that day, did your squad car have a dash camera?
Yes.
And were you also wearing body cameras?
Yes.
And is that true every day you worked as a Brooklyn Center police officer, that you had a body camera and a dash camera?
Yes.
And have you had an opportunity to review both the dash camera and your body worn camera video from the incident?
Yes.
And have you also had an opportunity to review the body worn camera from Officer Potter's body worn camera from the incident?
Yes.
And before court, did you have a chance to look at pieces of those videos that we intend to show you today in court?
Yes.
And did you recognize those as being accurate recordings of what happened that day?
Yes.
Before we start with those, the first dash camera that we have, there's no audio for a period of 30 seconds. Do you know why that is?
Yes.
Why is that?
When you initially activate your lights on your in your squad car, the dash cam and the body cam has a delay of 30 seconds with audio because it records everything that is happening 30 seconds before you, to the time you hit the record button, either by initiating your traffic lights, hitting the button on your body cam, or manually hitting the record button on the arbitrator, which is the record button on the actual dash cam.
So you end up with 30 seconds of video with no audio, essentially, correct?
Yes.
And so turning on your lights activates the camera and eventually the audio.
Yes.
And so I'm going to show you now Exhibit 10. And this is a composite video, two videos, of both your body-worn camera and your squad camera. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Your Honor, we would offer Exhibit 10.
Exhibit 10 will be admitted into evidence and you may publish.
And earlier you testified about what some of what was going on here, and so I just want to kind of ask you a few questions about that. This is following the vehicle and the stop, correct?
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's go ahead and play the video, please. Now, while we have no audio, this in the bottom right corner is your dash camera, correct?
Yes.
And the upper left corner is your body-worn camera, correct?
Yes.
Can you just show the jurors generally where you were wearing that on body-worn camera?
On that day, my body cam was placed in the middle of my chest. Union Boy Yellow. It'll be on 63rd and Orchard Lane.
Really? There you go.
Move forward.
You're gonna stop right here.
Hey, can I get a second car over here, please? Yep.
I'm going to pause it there really quickly. To just have a couple of quick questions. There was a female voice there we heard saying, "Really?" Do you recall that?
Yes.
Can you tell us whose voice that is?
Officer Potter.
Okay. And then there was a time when you said, "Get a second car here, please." Do you recall hearing that?
Yes.
And is that when you're calling on the Brooklyn Center radio to get another car?
Yes.
All right. And, okay, let's continue playing that. Thank you.
Hey, what's going on, man? You got a driver's license and proof of insurance for me at all? You don't have a driver's license? Okay. What's your name? You're Daunte? Okay, gotcha. Well, there's a couple things. Here's why I stopped you. The air freshener hanging down there. Yep, give me that. And then our other question is your tabs.
Yeah, they're expired. I'm getting them at the moment, but due to corona stuff, they're taking it slow. I have to set up an appointment.
Okay, okay. Do you have any, who's the car registered to?
My brother,
What's his name? Okay. All right. Do you have insurance in the vehicle then? You got any type of identification at all? Yeah. Yeah, just keep looking for the insurance, and then I'm gonna write your name, date of birth down. All right. So, what's your first name? How do you spell it?
Daunte,
D-A-U-N-T? Okay. T-E? Okay. What's your middle name? R-I-U-S? Okay. What's your last name? Okay. And then what's your date of birth? Okay. Sounds good. Alright, just keep looking for that. Oh, you don't have a driver's license, you said, so...
So my brother will have to
Where do you stay at? Okay.
That's why I got my record.
Okay, I got you, man. What's an address for you, you said? 2814 North Lane Drive. What's the phone number for you? Okay. 3360? Okay. Alright. So I'm assuming there's just no insurance in there then, or? That looks like it. So this is definitely not it. It expired in 2017. So, does your brother have a valid driver's license? Okay. Dallas, okay. Let me see that again. The insurance there. You said so. It should be registered to him, right? Okay. So this name insured is Taylor R. Pagel. So Corvette and Buick. Okay.
When
Okay.
you ran the place, what did they say?
It came back as Dallas, yeah. So just want to make sure. Okay. All right. Well, just sit down right back, man. Just keep looking for the insurance, okay? Okay. I wanted to say he was lying, but I think he's honestly telling the truth. So.
This is a flag with a blue matrix, 058 Union Victor. Adam was heading on the frontage road toward
Daunte.
Minneapolis.
So.
1938. I see your code 4. Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, if you want to just keep coming.
Yeah, don't go for yourself until you put it. Did you go for yourself?
Yeah, I did.
05 to 19. Not sure where you are, but I'm about 30 blocks out.
Yeah, don't go for yourself until you know who you got.
13 and 67.
Okay.
Then I'll continue until,
Right? Because somebody's had warrants.
Okay. Okay.
Just don't run him that way. You might not come up with the right one if you gave the wrong name, right? Just run him as Daunte Wright. No, just run him like you were in DBS.
Yeah.
Just don't put all that other information in it.
Oh, okay.
See what it gives you.
He said his brother is Dallas.
Your incident has been updated. New message.
Or Dairies.
License status suspended. Mail. State records hit.
See? You don't want to code for yourself.
Sorry, that's the car. Queries. Keep going.
It's got a gross.
Daunte Wright.
Weapons violation.
And it smells like marijuana in the car, so it's the second one we got.
3238 Central Prison.
Affirmative.
You're going to want to find out who the female is because there's no OFP.
Yep.
There's a harassment order.
He's got a gross misdemeanor warrant, and there's an OFP for a female, so I need to ID her. There's also residue, like weed on the middle console, so probably search the car. Apparently the car is his brother's.
You want to tell him what the warrant's for?
Warrant is for the weapons violation.
Has been updated.
So,
Daunte Wright.
Daunte
Daunte Wright?
Wright.
Aren't those the Wright brothers? Not the ones that fly, but the other one?
Okay, so I'm just gonna get him out and then cuff him up. I mean, he's got a warrant, so I'm just gonna get him cuffed up. Okay.
So does that depict then the time between following him, stopping the vehicle, the first approach, and then just right towards when you next approach the vehicle?
Yes.
And the officer that appears off to the right outside the car, who is that?
Sergeant Johnson.
And I am going to show you then the next, well, Your Honor, at this time we would offer Exhibit 11.
Any objection to Exhibit 11? Exhibit 11 will be admitted into evidence and you may publish counsel.
This is something that you were also able to watch before court, so you recognize this as an accurate depiction of what happened.
Yes.
And so 11, this exhibit includes the video of the second approach through the shooting, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's play Exhibit 11.
Daunte. All right, man, here, do me a favor. Just step up and I'll explain what's going on. You can just put your phone on the dashboard there, okay? And then the paper. I'll explain all that in a second, okay? Just turn around, put your hands on your back. Okay, so you are going to be under arrest, okay? You do have a warrant, so. Don't. Don't. You're tense enough, bro. Don't do it. Don't do it. Bring it back. Hey! Don't. Stop. Ah, he shot me. Get in the car.
Yes! I grabbed the wrong fucking gun! I shot him! Oh
Kim, sit down.
my god!
PI access 63rd and Captain Drive, flight from 38 stop, start north on the red.
Starting north on the red, then you repeat your first part, please.
Now, we noticed at some point there that your video drastically changed. Did your body camera fall off at that point?
Yes, it did.
And at some point, did you pick it back up and put it on?
Afterwards, yes.
I'm next going to show you Exhibit 13. Do you recognize that as the body-worn camera video from Officer Potter at the time that depicts the encounter there from her body camera?
Yes.
You offer Exhibit 13?
Exhibit 13 will be admitted into evidence and you may publish.
Say having stuff on.
Hey, Daunte. All right, man, here, do me a favor. Just step out of the car. Okay, so you're already under arrest, okay?
You got a warrant.
You have a warrant. Don't.
I'm not doing nothing.
Don't. You're tensing up, bro.
I'm
Don't
not
do
tensing
it.
nothing.
Don't do it. Can't bring it back. Hey, don't.
I'll tase you! I'll tase you! Taser!
Ah, he shot me.
Oh my shit! I just shot him. Yes! I grabbed the wrong fucking gun! I shot him! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Then Officer Luckey, in trying to provide as best a perspective of this whole incident that we can through these, we're also able to view a composite video like this of your squad car and Officer Potter's body-worn camera during that time period. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, we would offer Exhibit 12.
Any objection to Exhibit 12? Okay, Exhibit 12 will be admitted and you may publish that exhibit.
not doing nothing.
Don't. You're sitting up, bro.
not
Don't do it.
touching nothing.
Don't do it. Bring it back.
I'll tease you! I'll tease you! Taser, taser, taser!
Ah, he shot me.
Oh my shit! I just shot him. Yes! I grabbed the wrong fucking gun! I shot him! Oh my god! Oh my god!
PI access 63rd and Catherine Drive, flight from 38 stop, start north on the red.
Starting north on the red, then can you repeat your first part you said?
Right at the end of that video, there's a small black item or object in the street in front of you. Did you see that?
Yes.
Do you know what that was?
Yes.
What was that?
My body camera.
Okay, and did you at that point go pick it up?
Yes.
And in the moments after this video stops, does Ms. Potter continue to make statements about what happened?
Yes.
And so we would at this time offer Exhibit 14, which is a composite of the body-worn camera videos occurring after. Okay?
An objection to Exhibit 14. Exhibit 14 will be admitted into evidence and you may publish.
You can play Exhibit 14, please.
I just shot him.
Get in the car.
Yes! I grabbed the wrong fucking gun! I shot him! Oh my god!
Kim, sit down.
Oh my god!
I got it.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Starting north on the red.
Are you okay? Just breathe. Just breathe. Just breathe. Just breathe. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Kim, that guy was trying to take off with me in the car.
It's okay. Just breathe. He's still okay. Breathe. Breathe.
Kim, take a breath. Kim, take a breath. All right.
Okay, 2 rigs, phase of a couple blocks out.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Driver, stop breathing.
No, no, just go. Just go.
Oh my god!
We can get the road shut down westbound
Yeah, just hurt
on 63rd.
my squad, not yours.
Okay.
Officer Luckey, during that video, there's a point when Ms. Potter is on the ground and she says something about prison and you said, no, you're not. Do you recall what she had said about prison?
I do not recall exactly what she said about prison.
Okay. Did you hear it on the video today?
Yes.
What did she say?
She said, I'm going to prison.
And then you said, no, you're not, right?
Yes.
So you had heard her at the time.
Yes.
And at the end of that video there's some talk about blocking traffic and moving a squad car. Can you explain, just for the jury, basically what you did then to help secure that stop scene?
Yes, so what I did, I got on my radio, other squads that were en route to the scene. I knew that we needed to leave our cars there, and I wanted to at least have the west side of the street on 63rd Avenue of Orchard Avenue shut off so cars can't come through.
And were you able to do that?
Yes.
How did you do that?
At that point, I was directed by Sergeant Johnson to take his squad, and that is when I jumped in his squad car and parked it in the middle of the road to block off traffic.
And did you then remain at the scene of the stop there for some period of time?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately how long you were there?
I would say approximately about 2:44 p.m.
Is when you left the scene?
Yes.
And, I think I never even asked you at the beginning about what time it was that you initiated the stop. Do you recall?
Yes, the initial stop, I believe, would have been 1:54 p.m.
And so you were still there at the scene at 2:44. How did you leave the scene?
I left. I was partnered with a officer from an outside agency who accompanied me. I sat inside of her squad car, and until one of my sergeants arrived and had further directions for me.
So because an officer was involved in this situation, there are certain procedures that get followed, correct?
Yes.
And so you weren't involved in any further investigation of the incident, either at the stop scene or at the crash scene?
No.
And you were eventually driven from that scene back to the police department?
Yes.
Thank you, Officer Luckey. I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Okay, counsel, you may cross.
Good afternoon, Officer Luckey. We've met once before.
Yes. Good afternoon.
On that last video that we just saw, there's a voice that appears and says, "Kim, that guy was trying to take off with me in the car." Remember hearing that?
Yes.
Whose voice was that?
Sergeant Johnson's voice.
And that was said, that statement was said right after she said, "I'm going to prison," and he says, "No, you aren't."
Oh, I object, Your Honor. That's a mistake.
Members of the jury, you rely on your own memory as to what you saw on the video, okay?
What caused him? What was the sentence before he said, "Kim, that guy was trying to take off with me in the car"? Do you remember?
I don't recall at this very second what he said.
But you do remember Johnson saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me start with your comment that you had an intuition when you were following initially the white car, but you were not asked about what the intuition was. So what was your intuition at that moment when you saw the car and you had one?
You mean when I was initially at the intersection of 63rd and Zane Avenue?
Correct.
Okay. Initially, my intuition was the fact that it is a high crime area. That area is known for a lot of shootings. For me, it was the behavior of the vehicle. It's the hesitation from the beginning that the right blinker was on following the left turn lane.
Is this a high crime area for guns as well?
Yes.
And for drugs?
Yes.
And your intuition is formulated by a number of things, but among them is that you've been in this area all your life
Yes.
and know the streets as well as anybody.
Yes.
And you rely on that kind of hunch, do you not, on your daily task of being a police officer?
Yes.
It's kind of gut instinct, isn't it?
Yes.
And that was one of the reasons, your gut instinct, your intuition was one of the reasons you were following the car, right?
Yes, one of the reasons.
And you ran the plates, found that the tabs were stale, and then you had a reason to stop the car. Is that right?
Yes.
So you wanted to find out what was going on.
Yes.
Because you had an intuition that something else was going on besides the tabs.
Yes.
You didn't quite know, but you were curious.
Yes.
And there was nothing wrong with you stopping the car for the reasons you said you stopped it, right?
Correct. No.
Now you're with former Officer Potter, and she's your FTO, but you're making the decision to stop the car, are you not?
Correct.
And
Yes.
the way this works is that she supervises you, of course, but you can make your own independent evaluation of what to do, and then she kind of coaches you through it after the fact. That's kind of how it works, right?
Yes.
And you've been on several shifts with her before, you mentioned, right?
Yes.
And you weren't exactly a novice police officer. You spent some time in Gaylord and up in the reservation, so you've done a lot of stops, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. So, the minute you walk up to the car, you want to find out who this person is, right?
Yes.
And he tells you, Mr. Wright tells you he doesn't have a driver's license, right?
Yes.
So as a matter of law, you know as a police officer, he had no business even driving the car.
Yes.
He can't drive a car without a license, right?
Yes. Correct.
He didn't offer you one, didn't offer you a permit, nothing, right?
Correct. Yes.
So at that point, you weren't going to let him go away anyway. You were never going to let him drive away.
No.
So it's fairly standard when you walk up to a doorway and say, "Can I see your license?" That's just police work 101, correct?
Yes.
It's standard to ask for insurance, right?
Yes.
Okay, because by law, and you're entitled to enforce the law, you're required to enforce the law, that everyone has to have insurance on their car, right?
Yes.
And if you don't have insurance on the car, you can't drive the car, right?
Yes.
So until you found out that they had insurance or insurance was covering this car, the car would never be going anywhere either, right?
Yes.
It would have to be in the end towed away, correct?
Yes. As long as it's not blocking traffic. Yes.
And he gave you this insurance card with some guy's name named Pagel on it from 2017, right?
Yes.
And you weren't very convinced by that, right?
Correct. No.
In fact, your intuition was that there was no insurance whatsoever.
Yes. Correct.
Then you had the odor of marijuana. Was it an odor, or was it smoke, or what was it?
It was just the odor of marijuana. I did not see any smoke.
And you saw the shake around the car, right?
Correct. On the middle console.
And it's illegal to have marijuana inside a car, is it not?
Yes.
And it's illegal to be impaired by marijuana, although you couldn't tell at the time, but that's another infraction that could be in play here, right?
Correct.
So you had a number of concerns about him, right?
Yes.
And your intuition that something was amiss was validated almost immediately.
Yes.
But you were required to do more. And what you're required to do is check for warrants, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is police work 101 as well, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's nothing unique to Daunte Wright, what you were doing, right?
Yes.
So you check the database, and he comes up with a warrant, right?
Yes.
And it's for a gun.
Yes.
And that causes your concern to rise, does it not?
Yes.
Because you know, as you've told us, there are lots of guns in the area, right?
Yes.
And you know from your experience that it's possible now that he has a gun.
Yes.
You were thinking that way, weren't you?
Yes, I believe, and for my safety, there's a gun in every vehicle that you stop.
In fact, you found over your time in Brooklyn Center that a substantial percentage of cars have guns in them. Have you not?
Yes.
You know, roughly 2 in 5, although that's an estimate, isn't that right?
I object, Your Honor's lack of foundation.
Well, I think he answered the question. The objection is overruled.
About 2 in 5?
Yes, if you
That's
wanted to be proactive, you could probably find 2 and 5 in a shift. Yes.
So you
in
thought,
Brooklyn Center.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. I'm sorry. So you thought, or you had an intuition based upon your experience growing up in the area, that not only might he have a gun, but it might be on his person, right?
Yes.
And if it's not on his person, the gun could be in the car, right?
Yes.
And one of the places that the gun's often placed in a car that you stop is in the console, right?
Yes, sometimes. Yes.
Or it could be in the left driver's door, for that matter, as well.
Yes.
It could be accessible to him, right?
Yes.
So your safety concerns have accelerated here while you sit there, isn't that right?
Yes.
Because you know that one of the most dangerous things you do in your work is a traffic stop.
Yes.
It's unpredictable.
Correct.
You don't know what the driver's going to do, right?
Yes.
Then you get the harassment order, right? Does that come up on the same computer page that the bench warrant has?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And the harassment order indicates that someone has filed a restraining order against him, right?
Yes.
And it's a female, you know that.
Yes.
We're not going to mention any names here, but to get a harassment order, you know that they went to court. Whoever got it went to court, convinced the court or a judge to issue it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you know from your time as a police officer that you got to find out who that person is, obviously, right?
Yes.
You also know that sometimes the same person in the harassment order reconciles, even though they're not supposed to, and continues to see the person, right?
Yes.
Now, the bench warrant for the gun left you little discretion as to what you should do, right?
Yes.
You couldn't let him go.
No.
The court has ordered you to arrest him, right?
Correct. Yes.
Particularly for a gun charge.
Yes.
So you made the decision to arrest, but former Officer Potter didn't take issue with that whatsoever, right?
No.
And Sergeant Johnson was there by then, right?
Yes.
The reason you asked for backup was this intuition that you've told us about, correct?
Yes.
It would be helpful from your point of view to have 2 police officers there in case something happens,
Yes.
because something could, right?
Yes.
And something did.
Yes.
So the plan is to make an arrest, and Officer Johnson places himself at the passenger side, isn't that right?
Yes.
He's providing what is called in your profession cover, right?
Yes.
He's called the cover officer.
Correct.
He's going to take care of the young woman on the passenger side so nothing happens from her end, is that right?
Yes.
Standard operating procedure. And you're pleased that he's there, right?
Yes.
And you approach Mr. Wright and tell him to get out of the car, which is standard procedure.
Yes.
Okay. He resists, or at least stalls a little bit, according to you.
Yes.
You've seen a lot of people get out of cars.
Yes.
And it's usually faster, right?
Yes.
And after you tried to cuff him, as the seconds wore on, did he ever stop resisting you?
No.
when you said, "Don't do it, bro," I believe that's your sentence.
Yes.
He was tensing up, but we can't see how he is tensing up on the video. Would you describe that for us?
Basically, it was right when I placed the handcuff on his left hand. He just attempted to pull away from my grip from his fingers. That's what he did. It was an immediate jerk, and I was able to still hold on.
So when he, if I may interrupt you, when he felt the steel
Yes.
on his skin, he pulled it right away.
Yes.
He wasn't going to let you do it.
I don't know, but he didn't.
And when you said, "Don't do it, bro," you were warning him to not only comply, right?
Yes.
But you're also warning him not to do anything else, right?
Yes.
And did he follow your advice?
No.
It appeared from your point of perspective that he knew what you were saying, right?
Yes.
He could understand you.
Objection, Your Honor, formation.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
He could understand you.
Yes.
Now his car is not moving.
No.
It's not in gear.
That I can recall, no.
You don't know if it's even on or off, right?
No.
But you know you can't let him go.
Yes.
You can't let him drive away.
Correct.
Because if he drives away, that's another felony, fleeing a police officer.
In a motor vehicle, yes.
And you also know that if he takes flight in a motor vehicle, it's going to be fast.
Yes.
But you've seen that before.
Yes.
And in your view, the fleeing a police officer in a motor vehicle is a dangerous felony.
Yes. It's a felony for fleeing in a motor vehicle. Yes.
Involves danger involving a car.
Yes.
Okay. So at this point, Officer Potter says, "I'll tase you." You remember that, which is another warning to him, isn't that? Is that correct?
Yes.
It warns him that he should stop, or else he'll be tased, right?
Yes.
And when she says that, does he stop at all?
No.
He continues on with his struggle.
Yes.
He's going to grab the steering wheel.
Yes.
She says, "I'll tase you a second time." Does he stop?
No.
And then the final seconds go by. He's still resisting.
Yes.
You're still partially in the car.
Yes.
Right? Johnson is in the car, as far as you know.
Yes.
He's in a vulnerable position if he drives away, right?
Yes.
You're in a vulnerable position if he drives away.
Yes.
If he takes off, you could be seriously injured
Yes.
or die.
Yes.
Johnson could be as well,
Yes.
or die.
Yes.
Officer Potter yells, "Taser, taser, taser." That's easily heard, isn't that right?
Yes.
That's consistent with the training you have received for tasers.
Yes.
Right? It tells everybody what's going to happen, right?
Yes.
And when she says taser, 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 does he stop?
No.
He just keeps going.
Yes.
And then the shot is fired.
Yes.
You know, given your taser training, would you have used a taser if you could have?
With that situation, yes.
So tell us why.
Just because at the moment he was not in control of the vehicle, in control of the vehicle, and in our policy it is, as long as they don't have control of the vehicle, it would be feasible.
And did he have control of the vehicle when she shouted taser, taser, taser?
In my opinion, no.
Then what happens is the shot is fired and you back up. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's standard protocol too, is it not?
Yes.
Because if you're touching the person who's being tased, you could be subject to a charge as well.
Possibly, if you have contact with the the darts and the wires on the taser.
Nothing in your training for tasers requires you to step back 7 feet away in this kind of situation, does it?
No. Sometimes you have to have control. Sometimes you can have control of the person that is being tased. You can still physically grab onto them.
You can shoot from a very short range, in other words.
Yes.
And you're trained accordingly.
Yes.
That you can do that.
Yes.
So what you were trying to do is stop him
Yes.
from fleeing
Yes.
and arrest him, right?
Yes.
And there was a... and you knew if he drove away, he'd go pretty fast, or that was your intuition, right?
Yes.
And in fact, what happens here is that the taser said the shot is fired and he leaves quickly. Isn't that right?
Yes.
It looks to us on the video, I want you to tell me if my observation is right, is he puts the pedal to the metal and he's gone.
Yes.
Which is a dangerous act too, driving a car that fast.
Yes.
In fact, within moments he's in another accident, right?
Yes.
Within seconds, really.
Yes.
In your view, before the taser was said and the shot was fired, did Daunte Wright have control of that car?
Objection has to answer.
I'll let you answer me.
No.
Go ahead just a moment.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you answering my questions.
Does Jay have redirect?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Luckey, Mr. Engh did a nice job of leading you through a whole series of questions. His questions much longer than your answers. And I think towards the end, your last answers were that Mr. Wright really put the pedal to the metal after that, right?
He stepped on the gas pedal pretty hard.
So the whole point of using a taser is neuromuscular incapacitation, right?
Yes.
You're familiar with that from your training.
Yes.
And when somebody gets tased and they're subject to neuromuscular incapacitation, they don't have control over necessarily over their muscles and their body control.
Yes.
And that's why you don't tase people who are in a position to operate a vehicle, right?
Yes.
Because if you tase somebody and neuromuscularly incapacitate them, the vehicle becomes an unguided hazard.
Yes.
And here in this case, you're not really blaming Daunte Wright for crashing his car when he had been even more than hit with a taser and a Glock hollow point bullet put through his chest.
Correct, no.
Yes. The objection is sustained, counsel. Please. This is your witness.
Okay. Mr. Engh asked you, in fact, he really put the pedal to the metal, right?
Yes.
And you said yes to that. You really think that you knew he put the pedal to the metal?
No. What I believed what he meant by that when he asked me that was basically he stepped on the gas pedal. I mean, even watching that video, you turn the volume up, you can hear the engine going.
Well, he had been just shot, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. And so the crash that happens, Mr. Engh asked you to agree was, showing his bad driving conduct. Did you know his physical condition when he was in that car crash a couple blocks away.
No.
So your answers, were they based on the suppositions that Mr. Engh was feeding to you, or what you actually knew about it?
Stick to the form of the question.
All right. Okay. Counsel, do you want to rephrase the question and ask something specific?
Sure. Did you know Mr. Wright's medical condition at any point after the vehicle drove away from where Officer Potter shot him in the chest?
No.
Did you feel like that day when you were acting on a hunch you were doing good police work?
Yes.
And that was important to your career as a police officer?
Yes, that's what I signed up for.
Yep. And you did not ever see, well, I guess I have to be careful. Did you ever see a gun in Mr. Wright's car?
No.
Did you ever see him make a move that you believed was him reaching for a gun?
No.
During your entire interaction with him, the second time, the time period during which he was shot, you were able to see his hands and where they were you not?
Yes.
And did Mr. Wright ever physically strike you?
No.
Did the passenger ever make any threatening moves towards you?
No.
And did you know at the time that Sergeant Johnson was restraining Mr. Wright from the passenger side?
Yes.
And did you know at the time that, were you holding on to Mr. Wright physically with your right hand?
At the same time?
Yes.
I believe so. I think at one point when I was, Sergeant Johnson had his right hand on the gear shift, and I think he was also grabbing Mr. Wright with his left hand, but I can't recall what he was doing.
But that's what you thought was happening at the time?
Yes, when I was glancing over, yeah.
And this, and at this moment, you were making efforts to shut the car off yourself.
At one point, yes.
Because you thought Mr. Wright, did you think Mr. Wright was trying to put the car in gear and drive away?
Yes.
And so the decision you made at that time was to stay hands-on with him and try to stop him from driving the car that way.
Yes.
There were, how many squad cars were parked behind Mr. Wright's car at the time?
There would have been two, mine plus Sergeant Johnson's.
And how many police officers were there at the scene with Mr. Wright at the time of the second confrontation?
3.
And the other 2 officers were both, how many years of experience did each of those officers have, do you think?
The objection is sustained.
Okay. So you were Mr. Engh asked you if you had to arrest him because of the warrant. And I think you said you did. I don't dispute that. But as a police officer, do you have discretion over the amount of force you use to accomplish an arrest?
Yes.
And the amount of force that you chose to use was placing your hands on Mr. Wright and trying to pull him out of the vehicle and shut the car off.
Yes.
And did you know at the time that that too was the same amount of force that Sergeant Johnson was using?
Yes.
And when you heard Officer Potter first say she was going to use her taser, you didn't pull yourself out of the vehicle at that time.
No.
In fact, you did not. Well, did you take yourself out of that vehicle anytime before the actual shot?
At one point I did, yes, and I do believe I went back into the vehicle.
Okay. So you weren't. So the concern that you expressed to Mr. Engh about potentially being dragged by the vehicle, you didn't have at the time you went back in the vehicle to try and disable it.
Sorry, ask that question again?
Sure. You told counsel on cross-examination that there was a concern that you could have been dragged and hurt by the car. But when you reached into the vehicle, put yourself into that vehicle, you must not have been concerned about that at that point, right?
Yes, but there's a possibility that it could have happened.
Always a possibility it could happen, right?
Yes.
That's not a question.
Right? Question mark.
I'll let the answer stand.
Did you ever see Mr. Wright turn on the ignition to the vehicle?
No.
Did you ever see him, and through any of your interaction with him, see him turn off the vehicle?
No.
If Mr. Wright had driven away without being shot by taser or by gun, you could have followed him at regular traffic speeds, could you? Could you have?
Yes.
I think you indicated that marijuana is a felony, isn't actually a small amount of marijuana, a petty misdemeanor, right?
Right.
Like a payable ticket.
Right. Yes.
So you had told counsel that it's a high crime area. I think you estimated 2 out of 5 cars have a gun in it.
Not an exact number, but just my experience working with guys on the street. It's yes.
The only gun you saw that day was the one that Officer Potter drew and shot Mr. Wright with.
The objection is sustained.
Did you see any other gun than the one that Officer Potter used to shoot Mr. Wright?
Same objection. This is beyond the scope of the crossing.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
No.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Is there any recross? No. Okay. Thank you. You may step down, officer. Okay, members of the jury, I'm going to excuse you for the day, and we'll start up this time promptly at 9 o'clock. Okay, so have a wonderful evening. can you tell us what witnesses you expect to call tomorrow?
Your Honor, could we have a quick sidebar, please?
Yes. All right, counsel, we'll start up again at 9 o'clock, and I know you always get here a little early. If anything comes up that you need to talk to me about, I'm always here at 8, and so is my staff. So let's try to get any issues ironed out before, so we can start out at 9 o'clock promptly. All right. Have a good night, okay?
Thanks, George.